there is a painful truth that must be spoken. Many people today approach God as if he were a banker, not a father. They come to him with an offering, expecting a transaction. They think, if I give this, God will give me that. But God never called us into a business arrangement. He called us into a relationship of love, trust, and surrender. Heaven does not operate like a marketplace. It operates on faith, obedience, and intimate fellowship. When the heart of giving becomes a deal, the presence of God withdraws. Because the moment you give to get, you have already stepped outside the covenant of grace. God never asked for your money so he could bless you. He asked for your heart so he could live in you. When you give with love, your gift carries divine fragrance. But when you give with fear or calculation, it becomes a dead ritual. You see, relationship always comes before requirement. From the beginning, God walked with Adam in the cool of the garden, not to collect, but to connect. He desired fellowship, not funds. He desired communion, not contribution. The tragedy of religion is that it teaches people to work for God instead of walk with God. We have replaced intimacy with instruction and presence with performance. But the true power of faith is born when your heart beats in rhythm with His. Many people ask, if I don't give my tithe, will God still bless me? My friend, God's blessing is not for sale. You cannot buy what has already been freely given. The cross of Christ paid the full price. The curse was broken, the law was fulfilled, and grace opened the door to abundance, not because of what you pay, but because of who you are in Him. Giving is no longer a condition for favor. It is a response to love. A father doesn't bless his child because the child pays him an allowance. He blesses because the child belongs to him. In the same way, God's favor flows not from your payment, but from your position as His child. When you give because you love Him, your offering becomes worship. But when you give because you fear Him, your offering becomes empty. The world says, you must give to receive. But the kingdom says, you receive so you can give. Relationship reverses the order. God first pours His goodness into you, then He teaches you to pour it out to others. That is why the Bible says, why love? Because He first loved us. When love becomes your motive, giving becomes a joy. It's no longer a demand, it's a delight. When your relationship with God deepens, you begin to understand His heart. He doesn't need your 10%, He wants your 100% devotion. He wants you to trust Him enough to say, Lord, all that I have is yours. That's not tithing, that's surrender. And surrender is the true language of faith. You may give money and never touch God's heart, but when you give yourself, you touch heaven. Some people give because they're afraid of losing. They say, if I don't give, God will take away my blessing. But that is not relationship. That is superstition. The Father does not punish His children for loving Him perfectly. He draws them closer, teaches them, and shows them His goodness. Fear creates distance. Love builds intimacy. The more you know His love, the more freely you give. Not to earn His favor, but to express it. Relationship means you can come before Him with nothing but your heart, and He will still receive you with open arms. It means He is not counting your coins, He is counting your surrender. He is not impressed by what you drop in the basket. He is moved by what you carry in your spirit. When you understand that, your giving becomes powerful because it's no longer about money, it's about meaning. True giving begins in the heart. It's when your spirit whispers, Father, everything I have is a gift from you. That's the place where worship is born. That's the altar where your gift becomes holy. When you give from that place, even a small seed carries eternal weight. Because God doesn't measure the size of your gift. He measures the size of your love. Religion says give to be accepted. Relationship says you are accepted, therefore give. The first produces pressure, the second produces peace. When you walk in relationship, you don't give to please God. You give because you are already pleasing to Him through Christ. That revelation sets you free from guilt, from manipulation, from fear of curses. It makes giving a celebration, not an obligation. So many people give out of routine. They write the check, drop it in the box, and walk away unchanged. But the true giver doesn't just give from the hand. He gives from the heart. He knows that God is not looking at the number, but at the nature of the gift. That is the difference between Cain and Abel. One gave an offering, the other gave from relationship. And God accepted Abel's offering because it came from love, not law. When your giving flows from relationship, it carries life. It multiplies not because of the amount, but because of the anointing behind it. Every seed planted in love produces harvests of peace, joy, and provision. God's economy is not built on percentage, it's built on presence. And when presence fills your giving, miracles follow. There is a deep revelation hidden in the truth of giving, one that many have misunderstood for generations. The law of tithing was never destroyed, it was fulfilled. Fulfillment means it reached its divine purpose and found its completion in Christ. The cross did not erase the law, it elevated it to a higher level, from the letter to the spirit, from duty to devotion, from calculation to compassion. What was once commanded is now inspired by love. In the Old Covenant, the tithe was a legal requirement. It was a system designed to teach obedience, gratitude, and dependence on God. It was part of a structured order where every Israelite gave a tenth of their increase to support the priests, the temple, and the work of God's house. But it was also a shadow, a temporary reflection of a deeper spiritual truth. It pointed forward to a time when God's people would not need laws written on stone, but His word written on their hearts. When Jesus came, He didn't come to break the law. He came to complete it. He said, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." The fulfillment means He brought the law to its divine conclusion, a place where it no longer binds, but transforms. What was once an external command became an internal conviction. The tithe under law demanded 10%. The heart under grace offers everything. This is where the misunderstanding begins. Many still live as though they are under the shadow, not the substance. They give their tithe to escape a curse, forgetting that Christ already became a curse for them. They give because they fear losing favor, not realizing that grace has already secured it. They still live under the burden of a command that has already been completed at the cross. The law pointed to Christ. Now that Christ has come, we walk in the freedom of His finished work. To say the law of tithing is fulfilled means we are no longer giving to earn righteousness. We are giving from righteousness. We are no longer giving under compulsion, but under conviction. The old covenant said, "You must." The new covenant says, "You may." Under the law, man gave because he was told to. Under grace, man gives because he wants to. The motivation has shifted from fear to faith, from rule to relationship, from law to love. The law revealed God's standard. Grace reveals God's heart. In the old system, you gave because it was required. In the new system, you give because it is desired. That is the essence of fulfillment. It is not about the abolishment of the principle, but the transformation of the purpose. God still calls us to generosity, but not as slaves of the law, as sons of grace. When you live in grace, giving is no longer about calculation, it is about communion. Think about it. When Abraham gave the tithe to Melchizedek, it was not a legal act, it was a prophetic one. The law of tithing had not even been written yet. Abraham gave out of revelation, not regulation. He gave because he saw something divine, not because he was commanded. That moment was a picture of new covenant giving. Giving that flows from revelation, from gratitude, from worship. Jesus fulfilled the law, not by erasing it, but by embodying it. He became the living expression of every principle God ever taught. The tithe under the law was about giving a portion. The life of Jesus was about giving all. He didn't give 10% of His life. He gave 100% on the cross. That is fulfillment. That is the divine upgrade from law to love. And now He calls us to give in the same spirit, not by rule, but by revelation. The church today often teaches tithing as a formula, a key to unlock blessing. But in the kingdom, blessing is not unlocked by payment, it is released by faith. Grace does not cancel giving, it changes its foundation. The law said, "Give or you will be cursed." Grace says, "You are already blessed, so give freely." Under law, you give to avoid punishment. Under grace, you give to express love. That's what it means for tithing to be fulfilled. When you understand this truth, giving becomes freedom. You don't sit with a calculator, you sit with a surrendered heart. You don't count your coins, you count your blessings. Every offering becomes a declaration. I give because I'm already loved. I give because I'm already free. You no longer give to fulfill the law. You give because the lawgiver now lives within you. The law demanded a portion. Grace empowers the whole person. The law measured your obedience by numbers. Grace measures your obedience by love. The law said, give a tenth. Grace says, give as the Spirit leads. Under law, the hand moved. Under grace, the heart moves. This is not less giving, it's deeper giving. Because when love becomes your motivation, your generosity exceeds every command ever written. The fulfillment of the law means we no longer operate under pressure, but under presence. When the Spirit of God lives in you, He guides your giving. Sometimes it may be a tithe, sometimes more, sometimes something entirely different, but it will always come from obedience of the heart, not obligation of the law. And when giving flows from the Spirit, it always carries life, joy, and power. When you understand that Christ fulfilled the law of tithing, you stop chasing blessings and start walking in them. You realize that you don't give to open heaven. Heaven is already open because of Jesus. You don't give to remove curses. The curse was removed at the cross. You give because grace has awakened your heart to generosity. You give not because you're forced to, but because love has become your law. There is a subtle danger that hides beneath the surface of many spiritual practices. The danger of religious obligation. It appears holy on the outside, but it is empty on the inside. It looks like devotion, but it is driven by duty. It sounds like obedience, but it is built on fear. Religious obligation is when we do what is right without the right heart. It is when faith becomes formula, worship becomes performance, and giving becomes transaction. God never wanted religion without relationship, but many have replaced intimacy with instruction and the Spirit with systems. The sin of religious obligation is not just about what you do, but why you do it. When your motive becomes mechanical, your worship loses its meaning. When you pray to impress, sing to perform, or give to earn, you are no longer operating under grace, but under the old spirit of law. That spirit turns sons into servants and worshippers into workers. It tells you that you must perform to be accepted, that you must give to be blessed, and that your value is measured by your sacrifice instead of your surrender. But the gospel of grace declares that everything flows from love, not labor. God is not impressed by religious routines. He is moved by a heart that truly loves Him. The Pharisees of old fasted, prayed, tithed, and preached. Yet Jesus called them whitewashed tombs because their actions were empty of affection. They honored God with their lips, but their hearts were far from Him. That is the essence of religious obligation, to appear godly while being spiritually distant. You can do everything right externally and still be wrong internally if love is missing. When giving becomes a duty, it loses its divine power. Many people drop their tithe or offering into the basket, not out of joy, but out of guilt. They say, if I don't give, God will not bless me, or if I skip a week, I might come under a curse. That mindset is bondage, not faith. That is the sin of religious obligation, the belief that your money manipulates God's favor. But God's blessing cannot be bought, and His favor cannot be earned. The cross already paid for every blessing you will ever receive. When you give to earn what has already been given, you insult the grace that made it free. Religion teaches you to earn what love gives freely. It teaches you to calculate your righteousness, to measure your spirituality by your actions. But God looks at the heart. He is not looking for your perfection. He is looking for your passion. He does not desire performance. He desires presence. The moment you turn relationship into routine, you step away from the living presence of God and into the cold system of religion. Religious obligation creates exhaustion. It makes you feel like you're never doing enough, never giving enough, never holy enough. You start to live under a constant weight of guilt, trying to impress a God who is already pleased with you through Christ. That pressure steals your joy, kills your faith, and replaces peace with performance. You no longer serve out of delight, but out of duty. And anything done without love eventually becomes lifeless. When Jesus walked among men, He constantly confronted religious obligation. He healed on the Sabbath to show that compassion is greater than compliance. He ate with sinners to prove that mercy is greater than rules. He accepted worship from broken people to reveal that love is greater than law. Every act of Christ was a declaration that the heart matters more than habit. The people bound by religion hated him because he exposed their bondage. They were more comfortable with rules than with relationship, more focused on traditions than on truth. The danger of religious obligation is that it looks spiritual. You can deceive others and even yourself into thinking you're walking in faith. But inside, your soul feels dry. You do all the right things, but you feel no life in them. You serve, you give, you pray, yet your heart feels distant. That's because God never breathes on obligation. He breathes on authenticity. When your service becomes mechanical, His presence withdraws until your heart returns to love. True obedience flows from intimacy, not intimidation. God doesn't want slaves who obey out of fear. He wants sons and daughters who obey out of love. Fear may control behavior, but love transforms character. Fear says, I must. Love says, I want to. Fear keeps you under the law. Love brings you into liberty. The law can make you act right, but only love can make you be right. That is why Jesus came to deliver us from the prison of performance and bring us into the freedom of grace. When your heart is free from religious obligation, your worship changes. It becomes real, raw, and alive. You no longer sing because the service says it's time to sing. You sing because your heart can't stay silent. You no longer give because you're told to give. You give because gratitude overflows. You no longer serve to earn a blessing. You serve because you are blessed. The shift is not in what you do, but in why you do it. Religious obligation always asks, what must I do to please God? Relationship asks, how can I know Him more? Religion works for love. Relationship works from love. Religion gives out of duty. Relationship gives out of desire. Religion obeys the letter. Relationship obeys the spirit. One drains the soul, the other fills it. That is why many believers feel burned out. They have been trying to live for God instead of living with God. God never wanted ritual without revelation. He never asked for lifeless offerings or empty songs. He desires hearts that burn, not hands that perform. He desires presence over performance, communion over compliance. The sin of religious obligation is not that you serve or give or pray. It's that you forget why you do it. When the why dies, the what becomes meaningless. The most dangerous thing about religion is that it can make you busy doing things for God while keeping you too distracted to be with God. True faith breathes, it lives, it feels, it flows from intimacy, not instruction. Religious obligation will always try to control you with fear, fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of rejection. But love casts out fear. Love restores joy to giving, meaning to service, and passion to worship. When love leads, every act becomes worship, every gift becomes grace, and every moment becomes communion with the one who never asked for religion, only relationship. There is a sacred power hidden in the heart of gratitude, a power that transforms ordinary giving into divine worship. Gratitude is the language of the kingdom, the heartbeat of true faith, and the foundation of every act of genuine generosity. When a heart is thankful, giving becomes natural. You do not need to be pushed, persuaded, or pressured. You give because you are overflowing. You give because your soul remembers what God has done. You give because you know that everything you have came from His hand. True giving does not begin in the wallet. It begins in the heart. A thankful heart is the richest heart on earth. You may have little yet still walk in abundance because gratitude changes how you see everything. Gratitude turns small things into blessings and blessings into testimonies. The ungrateful always see lack, the grateful always see grace. And where there is grace, there is giving. Because the one who is truly thankful cannot stay still. Thankfulness moves you to act, to bless, to share, to pour out what you have received. When you understand that every breath, every sunrise, every opportunity is a gift from God, you stop giving out of guilt and start giving out of gladness. Gratitude frees your heart from the chains of calculation. It replaces fear with faith and stinginess with surrender. The ungrateful man asks, how much do I have to give? The grateful heart asks, how much can I give? The difference is the difference between religion and relationship. One gives to meet a rule, the other gives to mirror love. In the Old Covenant, giving was commanded. In the new covenant, giving is inspired. Under law, people gave because they were told to. Under grace, people give because they are moved to. Gratitude is what moves the heart. It is the bridge between what you have and what you offer. When your heart remembers God's goodness, your hands cannot stay closed. Gratitude makes generosity effortless because it flows from remembrance, not from requirement. Think about the woman who broke her alabaster jar at the feet of Jesus. No one told her to give. No law required her to pour that perfume worth a year's wages. But gratitude drove her. Her tears told the story. She had been forgiven much, and therefore she loved much. She gave not to receive, but to express what words could not say. That is what true giving looks like. Not calculation, not compulsion, but a flood of love born out of thankfulness. When you give from gratitude, your offering carries life. It carries fragrance before God. It speaks louder than words. Heaven recognizes the sound of a thankful heart. The angels know when giving comes from love because it carries joy, not fear. It carries peace, not pressure. Gratitude giving is never about the amount. It is about the anointing behind it. A small seed planted in gratitude can produce a harvest greater than 1,000 offerings given in obligation. Gratitude also shifts your perspective about ownership. You stop saying, "This is mine," and start saying, "This was entrusted to me." You realize that you are not the source, only the steward. Gratitude humbles you to recognize that all that you have, your time, your talents, your resources, your strength, are divine deposits. And when you know it all comes from God, you cannot help but return it with joy. You begin to live open-handed, knowing that what flows out freely will also flow back abundantly. True giving flows from gratitude because gratitude keeps your heart alive. It keeps you connected to the source. When you lose gratitude, you lose perspective. You begin to think God owes you something. You begin to give grudgingly, as though heaven should pay you back. That is when giving loses its glory and becomes a burden. But when your heart is thankful, even sacrifice becomes sweet. You don't count what you lose, you celebrate what you can offer, because gratitude turns loss into worship. Gratitude also makes giving contagious. When people see a thankful spirit, they are inspired to give too. A thankful giver doesn't have to preach. Their life preaches louder than any sermon. Gratitude multiplies joy in a community. It unites people around grace instead of greed. It builds an atmosphere where generosity thrives, because thankful people always draw the presence of God. The more grateful you are, the more generous you become. Not because you have more, but because you see more. Gratitude gives you vision to see how blessed you already are. The world says, "I'll give when I have enough." Gratitude says, "I give because I already have enough." That is the divine reversal of grace. It teaches you that you are not waiting for abundance to begin giving. Giving is what leads you into abundance. Even Jesus demonstrated this principle. Before he multiplied the loaves and fishes, he gave thanks. Gratitude came before the miracle. He did not complain about what was lacking. He thanked God for what was available. That act of thanksgiving released multiplication. The same principle works today. Gratitude unlocks increase. When you thank God for the little, he trusts you with much. When you give out of thankfulness, heaven adds its blessing to your seed. Gratitude also protects your heart from pride. It reminds you that your success is not your doing, that your blessings are not earned, and that your provision is not self-made. Gratitude keeps you humble before God. It keeps you soft. And a humble, thankful heart is always a fertile ground for miracles. True giving that flows from gratitude never asks, "What will I get in return?" because it already feels full. It gives not to gain, but because it has already gained. It is the overflow of a soul that knows grace. It is the reflection of a life that remembers mercy. It is the song of one who knows that every good thing came from above. Gratitude transforms giving from a duty into worship, from a rule into revelation, from something you do into something you are. When gratitude fills your heart, you give because you cannot help it. You give because you have seen the goodness of God and it overwhelms you. You give because your life itself has become an offering, a living testimony that everything you are and everything you have exists by grace. So today, remember this: true giving is not measured by what leaves your hand, but by what overflows from your heart. When gratitude becomes your reason, generosity becomes your rhythm. Give not because you must, but because you are thankful. Give not to earn, but to express. For every act of giving rooted in gratitude echoes in eternity. And every thankful heart becomes a channel through which God continues to pour His endless grace.